Thanks everyone. Thank you, Magda. So tonight you will hear the candidates make an opening statement, answer questions that been posed to them, both by our organizations and by parents who registered for the forum like yourself. We will start with each candidate giving 2 minutes to give an opening statement. Melissa Rosenberg will give candidates a quick 15-second warning as we approach 2 minutes, and a time's up as well. We picked the order randomly, who will go first. So Ms. Adler, welcome, and please let us know your opening statement about special education.
Thank you so much for hosting this. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, fellow candidates. Stephanie, I know very well what it is to be a hockey mom, so I empathize with you there in the car. My name is Tootie Adler, and I've lived in Howard County for 40 years. I have 2 grown sons and 2 grandchildren in Howard County schools today. I was in business, which gives me a unique perspective as a member of the Board of Education, hopefully. When you run a business, you're responsible for a current as well as the future of your business, and decisions are made very, very carefully. Employees need support to keep the company vibrant and efficient, and we use information to develop best practices, never becoming complacent. Family businesses fail fast and they fail fast if they're lacking in oversight. When issues arise, we have to address them immediately. They don't correct themselves. Special education community experienced unprecedented loss of learning and support during COVID. We have dedicated teachers, staff, and administrators who work tirelessly to meet the needs of our special education students. However, HCPSS leadership needs to muster enormous support for these dedicated and overworked professionals, or we will not be able to retain them. I will advocate for positive solutions and best practices to ensure the quality of education for our special education community. And the first step in this effort is to acknowledge our special education programs are not meeting some basic requirements. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ms. Adler. Next is Dan Nuremberger. Good evening. Your opening statement.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much to HCAS, to CCAC for hosting tonight's event. I'm so glad that we're all here tonight talking about these critical issues. Thank you so much to the parents spending your busy time tonight with us to talk about issues that are so near and dear to all of us. Special education in Howard County, it's like most things in HCPSS. We have a reputation and a legacy for excellence, but the truth of what's happening in our classrooms for way too many families and way too many students is not matching that reputation. And we need to do better by all of our special education children. Every dimension that you look at of special education, we're falling short of the mark. Our students are not having the experiences that they need and deserve, and they're not getting the outcomes that we need them to be having. And COVID has only worsened what was already a tenuous situation for so many of them, from diagnosis to the IEP process, to the service delivery, to transitions throughout their education. We need to do better by these students. You parents are having really, really bad experiences as well. We need to really overhaul how we think about the IEP process and the kind of antagonistic dynamic that goes on where parents feel pitted against their own schools to get the services that their children by law, deserve and need to have. Our hardworking educators are also not being taken care of by our district. The workloads are out of control. Our staffing problems fall in the lap of our special educators and their support staff. And we need to do better to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help the special education staff have the resources and support they need so that they can deliver the quality education to our kids. Beyond that, we have some huge issues that we need to tackle in a serious way, and we're falling short. Mental health is a crisis across the country here in Howard County, and we need to make sure that we're attacking it in the right way. We're in the middle of transforming to a brand new way of how we teach reading, embracing the science of reading, and all sorts of issues we'll talk about in depth. So thanks so much. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks so much, Dan. Dr. Chen.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, CCAG, HCAG invited me. And also, I'm so glad to have the translation for the Spanish. I think this is my first platform to have some translation. It's so important to pay attention to the special ed, especially immigrant family. They are often neglected. So I definitely hear that. So my basic information, I'm a parent of 3, attending each level of the HECPSS. My daughter went to Russell High, and my son went to Hammond Middle, and my younger one is at the Hammond Elementary School. I'm committed to the quality of public education. This including the special needs students. And I'm the first college graduate in my family, and I received a PhD from the University of Virginia. And also my personal journey taught me that education can change people's life. And I want to make an education difference in Howard County students' life. I'm also very involved in the school system. I have in elementary school, middle school, high school, in the PTA. If I can help, I will be there. And also the BOE Operating Budget Review Committee and the school advisory committees, including Science Advisory Committee, Social Study Committee, and the Calendar Committee. I'm heavily involved in scouting. I'm then leader for 4 years, Impact 6606, and also I'm serving as summer coordinator in the 775. Also, I'm helping the sports team. I was a treasurer before for the travel soccer team, and also help around the scores in the basketball games. So, and the Linstead Day Camp, take all kind of roles around the science station. I really have good time there, and glad to see the students have fun. I'm truly unaffiliated with any political party and put the students above politics. I hope my independence can make sure the best decision for all of our students. And you can tell my accent. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Ms. McCoy, your opening statement. Welcome to our forum.
Good evening. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to have a conversation with the members of the Special Education CAC. And I, as a person who has challenges, I don't necessarily call dyslexia a disability. It's just a difference. I understand the issue of navigating a system that's not necessarily designed for your way of learning. And so, and also as a parent of having to navigate the IEP process and trying to get my child's needs taken care of, I understand how challenging that can be. I am a resident of Longreach Village. I've been in Longreach for 25 years. I've been in Maryland for over 40 years. I taught at Longreach High School for 4 years. My adult children attended high school, middle and high school here. I've taught on every level. I've done homeschool, I've done private school, I've done elementary, middle, and high school. So I'm very familiar with the challenges of each level, but I'm specifically in this regard, very familiar with the frustration of trying to get services for my child. And so I definitely will be an empathetic person on the board who understands that the system is not delivering what it should be delivering. It is subpar for the amount of money that we spend in this county. We should be getting better services, and it should not be an adversarial relationship with the school system trying to obtain services for your children. So I look forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, candidates, for those great opening statements. So now we'll proceed to questions. We're going to cover 4 issues. First, overall issues by Stephanie Carr. Jeannie Maria Leotsakis will cover compliance issues. Stephanie Mummer will talk a little bit around inclusion. And then Saprit will ask questions about this. And then Grace Torres will close up with some additional questions that we heard from parents who registered. Cannot guarantee that we'll be able to get all those questions in, but I welcome participants to put questions in. Go ahead, Stephanie. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Introduce who you are briefly.
Okay, thank you. My name is Stephanie Carr. I'm a parent of 3 children with disabilities. I'm a member of CAC. I'm also a member of Decoding Dyslexia Howard County. So what I did with my questions is these are a little bit of expansions on the answers in which all of the candidates have given already. So I went in alphabetical order from last name. So Ms. Adler, I'm going to ask you first. You talked about getting cameras and buses and assistance for those children who are struggling with transportation. And the question we have is, how would you hold the school system accountable for guaranteeing cameras and assistance on every bus, as well as providing parents equal access to viewing any kind of footage? And then second part is, and what are your thoughts on cameras in the classroom?
Thank you for the question. I certainly think that a Board of Education could work collaboratively to secure cameras on the buses. I think it's a very important issue, particularly if we have students who are nonverbal. And as far as cameras in the classroom, I think that would be very helpful. I would support that if we are, particularly in the area of special education.
Thank you. Dr. Chen, we're centering your question around mental health. Some parents are reporting that their children are having a hard time accessing the school district's mental health programs. How would you work with the district to ensure that students with disabilities have a therapeutic approach that address the underlying causes of mental health issues along with the academic difficulties while they navigate the IEP process?
So I think that mental health, everybody can tell during the COVID, it's just skyrocketing. But even COVID, the difficult issue is being there. It's just the COVID make it a lot worse. And then people expose, people can see the exposed problem. So how do we do that? I think a couple of things. The first, we definitely need to take a measure to do the prevention side. That's so critical. And then, like in my personal, because I heavily involved with scouting side, the prevention, we try to reduce the screen time and adding more fun in-person communication and the project. In the classroom, try to bring the teacher, using less, computer. We used to do virtual, and that can help that. And the screen is important too, because a lot of issue is just hidden. If we don't have a screen in place, we don't know the issue. And then the early prevention. So the school system need to put the money I'm sorry, it's time's up. And
no, you're
okay.
fine. You're fine.
No, that was somebody joining. Keep going, Dr. Chen.
Okay. So, and then right now, I think we have some, like Horizon Foundation also sponsor some pilot, some, mental health services at the school, bring the social workers to the school. I think that also can be very helpful to provide. And then now I think all the school available, that can be adding much needed resources to help the short staffed in many schools. So those issues can definitely be very helpful. So I think we will continue to work to secure more funding, to identify the needs and to match that. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McCoy, in your answers about improving reading outcomes, you discussed the science of reading. As a board member, how will you guide the school district to thoroughly embrace the science of reading at all levels? And secondly, and what will you do in the face of adversity or resistance to changing the current culture of reading instruction?
Well, the good thing about the Maryland Blueprint for Our Future, they're pushing the science of reading. So it's a statewide mandate, sort of. And because our scores in reading have been so abysmal, the resistance would have to be overcome by supporting the teachers in learning to teach what they have not, which they have not learned, which is phonics. There are a lot of young teachers now who did not grow up with phonics. And so it's going to be a heavy lift. There's going to have to be concerted efforts to make sure that the teachers are prepared. So that means professional development, not only just workshops, but intensives, so that the teachers will have better preparation. There also needs to be oversight, a mentor an educator, a reading specialist in each school to help teachers who may be struggling with understanding how to present reading from the perspective of the science of reading, which is really just teaching phonics and the better parts of whole language, because they're good things to both kinds of ways of reading and other methods as well. But I think that we have to recognize that we have lost a lot in not having phonics taught in the schools. And so now to have to, bring that about with educators who are not familiar, there's going to have to be funding provided to prepare the teachers to teach that which they may not be very familiar, and support in every school. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neuberger, you also talked about being fully committed to the science of reading and to help reading outcomes, and that it would take time, money, and commitment from district leaders. So I'm asking you the same questions. Would you like me to repeat them?
Can you, Stephanie? That'd be great.
Sure. First, how will you guide the school district to thoroughly embrace science of reading at all levels? And secondly, what will you do in the face of adversity or resistance to changing the current culture of reading instruction?
Got it. Thanks so much, Stephanie. And we're really where we are today with the science of reading because of groups like Decoding Dyslexia and the work that the advocates like you, Stephanie, have done on the ground, pushing the state of Maryland, pushing our district to really accept the science that's really clear about what's the best way to teach reading to kids. And I don't think we can underestimate how monumental a sea change this is for our educators, right? I mean, we're talking about a profound disruption and change in how they teach reading. And that's every educator in our building, basically, except for maybe the senior most folks who have been teaching for 30 plus years, who were around before our current systems were put in place. So this is, imagine how hard it would be to do your job if you suddenly had to transform how you did it from the ground up. We can't underestimate how important that is. And we need to get our teachers buy-ins. We need to get our educators to understand why this change is happening and to really accept it. And that's the first part is we need buy-in. We can't do this with resistance from the educators. They need to be fully bought in stakeholders in this change. And that's going to take good communication, listening, patience, empathy, not necessarily things that our district has shown a lot of strength in. So it's going to take the board to provide oversight to make sure that we're doing that. And then it's going to take real resources and support. It's not enough for the district to just throw an online training or 2 or even 10 at our educators and expect that's enough. This is not about just buying a new package of curriculum and throwing it at our teachers in our schools. We need real training and real support of our educators to make this transition. And like Jackie mentioned, it's going to take folks in the classroom observing and mentoring and coaching them along the way to make this shift. It can't just be done haphazardly. Our kids can't afford us to not get this right. So the board is responsible for accountability, and we need to make sure that our district is doing this the right way.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. I'm going to turn it now to Jeannie. Can you please introduce yourself, and you're going to ask questions around compliance.
Hello, I'm Jeannie Leotsakos. I'm the parent of 2 kids who have learning disabilities, one of whom attends Howard County Public Schools and one of whom I homeschool. And I'm here on behalf of HCAS. So the first question is for Ms. McCoy. A recent report from MSDE shows that Howard County has initiated provision of pandemic-related compensatory services to fewer than 25% of eligible students. That's the worst in the state. In your written answer, you suggested other steps needed to be taken in order to encourage HCPSS staff to volunteer to provide services and to educate parents on how to obtain outside services. Can you expand on what those steps might be?
Okay, when I that particular question, I asked special educators, and from what I understand, the process is to get teachers to volunteer to do the compensatory services. It's not done with efficacy in the sense that they send it out like they send emails, and they don't pursue teachers who might be willing to do it, but may not be aware of the urgency of the need. I think there needs to be a conversation with special educators who would be in the pool, to create a pool of teachers, special educators who would be volunteers to do the compensatory services, so that we don't have to send out a request, but you have a pool of teachers that you could call upon. I know as a parent trying to navigate the special education system, information was not very readily given. And so perhaps appointing a special educator advocate in the building so that parents know who to go to find what they need, or at least, the liaison, the ombudsman, that's the name I'm trying to think of. Having one person for the whole system would not work. Maybe a regional person or some special person that parents would know, okay, this is a person I could go to get support for what I'm looking for. And again, as far as the teachers are concerned, establishing a pool that is readily available, so you don't have to put an all call out for educators who would be available to do the compensatory services.
Thank you. The next question is for Ms. Adler. Hold on. Sorry about that. The next question is for Ms. Adler. According to the procedural safeguards, parents for whom English is not their primary language are entitled to have a translator at IEP meetings who understands both the IEP process and the parent's language and, of course, English. We're hearing from parents that this is a barrier to their participation. In addition to ensuring that translators are available, what other steps would you take as a board member to ensure that all parents are able to meaningfully participate in their children's IEP meetings?
Well, thank you for the question. Translators are just but one shortage or component that is missing from the system. I think that we have that in addition to other categories that really need to be put, I would say, in front of the superintendent and charge the superintendent with making sure that certain priorities are met. Translators and meetings and appropriate meetings for IEPs would be one. Compensatory education, seclusion and restraint, additional training for that. And certainly staffing is a huge problem. So I think it's, I don't mean to go off topic. I understand the question on this particular matter. Translators are a problem in other in other areas also. Because of the redistricting, some of the family members lost their translator and they don't have them at their receiving school. So these are staffing issues that we need to make sure that the superintendent is aware of and is dealing with. And I also wanted to mention in terms of the science of reading, I believe that that's an equity issue as well. And it also becomes a disciplinary issue if students are not reading and not able to follow the tasks that are put in front of them. So I wanted to be clear on that. I think that the structured literacy is critical for our students, and we should be able to do that. Whatever heavy lifting we can do, we need to do that.
It's time.
Thank you. The next question is for Mr. Newberger. Many students are experiencing busing issues, and they affect our children more acutely because students with disabilities requiring specialized transportation often have longer bus rides, are more sensitive to changes in routine, and maybe non-speaking. In addition to staffing and just finding more drivers, what else should HCPSS be doing to ensure safe and reliable transport for its most vulnerable students?
Thanks so much, Jeannie, for the question. It's good to see you. Yeah, transportation is problematic up and down the board, and especially for our special ed kids, like you mentioned, who are having bad experiences. And I think it's one of these issues where within the central office, functions that are outsourced, functions that are managed via contract and MOU, there's not as much ownership over those issues. So transportation is one of them, where we have bus companies and we have contracts, and when something goes wrong, the thought is, well, there's the bus, bus company XYZ is acting up again. Drivers are missing, drivers are late, special education students are not being treated right on the bus. Oh, well, let's have a conversation with the owner or manager of that bus company. And that's unacceptable. It's an ownership issue. It's an accountability issue. And the farther removed our staff is from the front line, which in this case is the school bus, the worse our outcomes are. And I think we really need to look at a transformation of how we do transportation up and down the board. I really believe we need to really examine bringing our bus drivers back in-house. Now, I'm not talking about owning the school buses. I'm very happy to outsource the maintenance and the storage and the repair of those monsters, right? Like, we don't need to be owning buses, but the drivers, right? That's the student experience, is the bus driver. The bus driver is an educator. It's the first person our students see every day. It's the last person they see before they go home. The experience on the bus is part of their education, and getting our kids to school on time without incident, without bullying, without trauma on the buses it falls in the lap of these bus drivers. And that's a really hard job, and it's outsourced, which means we don't, as an institution, care about it enough. So I think we need to really look hard at the numbers of how we would afford to do that. But the bus driver is not just the bus driver. It's the bus driver. It's an educator, and we need to treat them that way. Thanks, Melissa. Sorry, I'm going to keep your stopwatch busy tonight. I apologize in advance.
Thank you.
Oh, good.
So the next question is for Dr. Chen. Children at the intersection of race, ethnicity, and disability are particularly vulnerable. Worst rates of exclusionary discipline, restraint and seclusion, literacy rates, and graduation rates. For example, for the class of 2021, the overall English MCAP pass rate was 66%, but for white children with disabilities, it was 32%. For Asian kids with disabilities, it was 17%. For Hispanic children with disabilities, it was 10%, and for Black children with disabilities, it was 8%. As a board member, what will you do to improve outcomes for these kids?
Ginny, it's a long question. Do you mind to repeat the question again? I try to know the number.
Yes, and you know what? I can even put it in the chat if it's easier. As well, but
if you could just repeat it, I think I want to know, because of the number, I want to know what's the disparity there. So
So there are compound disparities as a function of both race, ethnicity, and disability. And so the one example that I gave, and those disparities are in virtually any outcome you would pick. But as one example, for the most recent graduating class of 2021, the overall English MCAP pass rate, and that's a test they have to pass to graduate, was 66%. But for white children with disabilities, it's 32%, less than half. For Asian kids with disabilities, it's 17%. For Hispanic children with disabilities, it was 10%. And for Black children with disabilities, it was 8%. As a board member, what will you do to improve outcomes for these kids?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the picture is a little bit complicated. I think one thing I can tell, I think definitely the economic status will impact on the income, because that can determine the resources available to those kids and the families. And also, you look at the Howard County is so diverse. We also have a lot of immigrant families as well. So personally, I know some of the cases, as well as during the campaign, I hear many cases simply from the teacher and from the families. Some of the special education students, they just don't get the resources they need. They just passing them. They give good grades, but they passing them. it's really sad to see that. And then once you have the testing, MCAT, yeah, results will show up, and it cannot hiding the results. So I think for us, for the school system, we definitely need to make sure identify the problem early and provide resources. For example, the tutoring or the after-school program tailored for special ed, as well as reach to the families who may not know the system well, and provide the language translation and also the training about the complicated area about the special ed, so much special knowledge. We need to make sure they understand. I have like similar experience about autism, because at one point, I would suspect my daughter have some autism as well. And we try to seek the counselor, try to find out, and we take some suggestion from them. So it's definitely, we need to make sure with the data, look at it, see if it's an economic issue or it's the other supporting issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeannie, for those great questions, and all the candidates for your answers. And I just want to thank again all the parents. I think it's a really great turnout tonight. Thank you so much for spending your time and learning so much from the candidates. We're going to turn now to Stephanie, who's going to dig a little bit further into inclusion. Stephanie Mummert.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Mummert. I'm the parent of a fifth grader with ADHD and co-chair of CCAC. And as Andy said, I'm going to ask some questions that dig deeper on the issue of inclusion. And I'll start with Ms. Adler. The question I have: Howard County is known in the state of Maryland for being the most inclusive school system when it comes to educating students with disabilities alongside their peers in their home schools. Research has shown that inclusion of students with disabilities benefits all students, those with disabilities and those without, when it is implemented appropriately and when the necessary supports and services are in place. Please share your view on inclusive education and any personal experiences you may have with inclusion of students with disabilities. As a board member, would you support inclusive education? And if so, how might you strengthen that type of inclusion?
Well, thank you for the question. I absolutely do support inclusion, and I do know that it is helpful. It is a positive for all students. When my children were younger, we were very involved in therapeutic riding program. And this was a very good experience for my children, who learned so much from that and became quite helpful and made friends and learned to have patience and compassion and supported their friends there. And I was just thinking about it the other day. One of my sons serves on a board at a school, private school in Rockville for disabled students. So it was a great experience for us. And I observed firsthand, spending a lot of time there, the positive influence that it had on my children. So I'm in favor, certainly do support inclusion if it's done properly. And as a board member, I would absolutely support inclusion if it's done properly. Thank you.
Okay, the next question for Jackie McCoy. Recent test scores and reports indicate that the achievement gap for those receiving special education services is not improving. What specific changes could be made to improve achievement for special education students?
As an educator, the issue that I had when I had students with special needs in my class is learning what their needs were early enough in the process so that I could provide the supports that they needed. Sometimes I would learn by mistake. For example, when I had an autistic student in class, and my practice was to have a warm up every morning and then just call students with the little popsicle stick, randomly. And I didn't know that there was a student with a special need in my classroom. And so communication is an issue, and helping the general ed teacher to understand the needs of the students before they actually come to the classroom would significantly help. Also, they have milestones that they want students to meet, but they're not necessarily aligned with the curriculum. And so it's very difficult to meet those needs. And so having real conversations with special educators to help align what I'm teaching in the classroom, what educators are teaching in the classroom with what the students need would be significantly better than what my experience was. And so there needs to be better coordination and better communication with the general ed teachers and the records of the special ed students with special needs and with the special educators. Communication seems to be a huge issue in this county. It's very poor education across the board. I mean, communication across the board, especially with teachers and with their support, staff members. So yeah, better communication and also better records, exposing teachers to the records early enough so that they'll be prepared for those students. Thank you.
Thanks so much. My next question is for Dr. Chen. In last year's operating budget, Dr. Martirano considered special education a critical area of need. Do you believe that special education is sufficiently funded? As a member of the board, what will you do to ensure special education is appropriately funded each year?
I think due to a lot of effort and CCAC and the MEDIC group, I think school system pay attention. They fully funded a special ed and have additional 186.8 special ed position. And right now, I think the most position already filled is almost 160 plus. So that's really a good sign for put the emphasis there. And I think that's one thing. The budget side, we need to provide more funding. The other side, we need to provide more the efficiency side, how the money is utilized. How can we use the money to train, put it where much needed, recruiting the staff, and then provide much needed training for the new staff. I think that's also another key issue we need to address. And yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm actually going to ask the same question of Dan Newberger. Would you like me to repeat it, or?
Do you mind, Stephanie?
Absolutely. In last year's operating budget, Dr. Martirano considered special education a critical area of need. Do you believe that special education is sufficiently funded? As a member of the board, what will you do to ensure that special education is appropriately funded every year?
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Great question. I think what we saw with special education in the budget is what we see across the budget, which is, yes, the superintendent got what he asked for special education, but he didn't ask for everything the district needs. So the answer is yes, his asks were fully funded. Were his asks correct? Were they comprehensive? Absolutely 1000% no. And we need to stop this gamesmanship with the budget, right? I don't totally understand why we pull our punches as a district when it comes time to ask the county and the state for what we need. Yes, we got additional positions and we can't underestimate how critical that is, but we know we have more needs to fill. And so, if Dr. Martirano really thinks that he funded everything that he needed, I mean, I honestly don't think he thinks that. I think he's, like I said, I think it's kind of just how superintendents of big districts play it. If he really thinks that, then I think we need to have a serious conversation because the needs are not being met. Therefore, the resources are not enough. And so, we need to start looking at doing things differently and not just going back with the same budget and goosing it up 3% every year or however it is we do it to nominally declare, another victorious year at the budget table. We need to really up and down look at what we're doing differently. And it gets to what you asked earlier about the question that you asked Jackie and the question that came up earlier about the achievement gap and how are we, the achievement gap is not improving. Therefore, the resources are not sufficient or they're not in the right places. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Those are the outcomes we need to see change. And so what we need to do, I think, really is we need to look at how do we get these interventions to our students with disabilities earlier. We know that if we can if we can get a student who struggles with dyslexia, if we can get them the services they need in kindergarten, they're going to have better outcomes than if it takes until 4th grade, right? So how can we push the process earlier? Why can't we do more assessments in preschools and then in early education processes, right? Like a lot of families are in the IFSP programs, ages, at birth to 3. A lot of students are in the extended program during the preschool years. With the blueprint expanding preschool, we're going to have much more preschool activity that the district is involved in. We need to make sure that we're getting away from this fail-through model where students and parents have to go through years of struggle before they can finally get the services they need. I think that's how we start to move the needle. It's not about, are we getting X number of positions more this year than last year? Yeah, maybe that's a tactical budget victory, but that's not getting the outcomes our kids need. Thanks.
Thank you all so much.
I'll turn it to Supreet, who's going to give our last set of prepared questions. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for being here. I'm Dr. Supreet Anand. I'm the co-chair of CCAC with Stephanie Mumert. I'm going to start my questions with Dr. Chen. So lack of appropriate behavioral supports and accommodations can be a major barrier for students with disabilities to access the general education classrooms. What suggestions do you have to better support our differently abled students in general education?
I think that's a perfect timing you ask a question, because yesterday I met a lot of teachers. They mentioned about the classroom situation. They don't have enough support. Once the disruption comes up, there's limited resources available to help them get over the crisis. So what I can understand from all the conversation is we definitely need more designated staff to make sure if something happens, they know how to handle, they can understand a special needs student well, they can see the sign, they can provide the necessary supporting and minimize the impact on the classroom so the instruction can go as smooth as possible. I think also some feedback as a general education teacher, not all of them want to take all the trainings. So I think we can here divide and conquer basically. The general education teacher, they focus on the instruction. Then we have somebody trained can make sure things, disruption can happen. They can come in to help. And so I think that area I will definitely ask for and make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. My next question is for Ms. McCoy. So what provisions should be included in our MOU, our Memorandum of Understanding, with the Howard County Police Department to ensure the safety of special education students, including students who are nonverbal or who may behave in ways that police officers could misinterpret?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that question. I think it's not just an MOU for the police officers, but there needs to be better preparation across the board for engaging with students with special needs. I know as a general educator in my training, it was just, let's go over the IEDA provisions, but not really how do you work with children. And so it was basically the responsibility of those studying special education to understand the needs. And so there needs to be a comprehensive effort to help general educators as well as with the resource officers or whoever, other personnel in the building to understand the needs of students. Even people, the custodians, they need to understand because they're going to engage with those students as well. And so I think having better understanding of the needs of those students will help develop better outcomes for those students. But the thing that I want to have the schools support the most is understanding the social emotional needs of all children including those students with special needs, so that it's not a side item, but it's part of the culture of the school that we take care of one another.
Thank you. My next question is for Ms. Adler. Students with disabilities are disproportionately disciplined, suspended, and physically restrained. The school system is increasing restorative practices to address this. Do you believe this is the correct course of action? If so, why? And if not, what would you do differently?
Thank you for the question. We absolutely need to focus on restorative practices. Some of the statistics that I gleaned from 2019-2020, less than 25% of preschool students served under IDEA. However, 50% of the suspensions are from this particular population. School-age students covered under IDEA are 13.2% of the population and represent 20.5% of in-school suspensions and 24.5% of one or more out-of-school suspensions. And Black students age 3 to 21 are 17% of the population and served under IDEA and represent 43% of students who are suspended or out of school expelled for more than 10 days. So, these statistics reflect symptoms of programs that are not really meeting the needs of our students covered under IDEA. Professionals need to examine the data and develop proactive, positive procedures and policies to replace exclusionary discipline so learning can continue, ensuring that students' experiences are positive ways to deal with issues, and we're setting up students for success. Always working for further education and self-sufficiency. We need to be collectively, the teachers and professionals need to be better trained in proactive measures to handle some of the issues that our students experience. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. My last question is for Mr. Newberger. So what alternatives to physical restraint and seclusion should Howard County be training its staff to employ, particularly now that House Bill 1255 has banned seclusion and requires reporting and corrective action plans for overuse of restraint?
Thanks, Supreet. I'm excited that the House bill passed, and that was really a triumph of so many dedicated advocates and parents like Jeannie and others who have been trying to elevate how dangerous and outdated seclusion and restraint practices have been in our schools. And we really need to embrace the neuroscience here. It's like the science of reading. The science, let's follow the experts, let's follow the science. And there are a lot of really interesting and exciting alternatives out there for retraining, not just special educators, but our general education staff, our security personnel, our administrators. Everyone in the building needs to be trained in this new sort of neuroscience focused behavior around how do you de-escalate, how do you, how do you get to a collaborative problem-solving approach, a low arousal approach, and not our traditional approaches, which have resulted in a lot of times in escalating crises and escalating discipline issues. And so, there's a lot of models out there. There's the neo-sequential model. There's Ikiru. There are a lot of approaches out there. I'm not going to say which one I think is best. I think we need to look broadly across all the alternatives out there, and we need to invest in a variety of approaches, and then have the data collection in place that we can really see what's happening. I think combined with a real true embrace of restorative practices, which can change the culture of a school to an environment where we're all trying to heal the culture and we're all trying to look after each other. I think we've got a real shot at changing behaviors among our staff and among our students and having better outcomes for students with disabilities. But again, it's not about just buying training modules and shoving our staff in front of their computers to watch, videos. It's about really embracing the culture change, really embracing what this means in our buildings and doing things differently. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sapri. We have some time left. We're going to go a little bit to a lightning round. I'm going to call on Grace Torres. Introduce yourself. She's going to pose some additional questions. I think we should have time for about 6 90-second answers. And these come not on any specific topic, but when parents registered, they were able to pose a question. And also we got a few more questions in the chat. And I did send those some shorter versions to you, Grace, in your chat if you saw it. So go ahead and introduce yourself and direct some questions to our candidates.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Grace Torres. My child with autism and ADD attend to Chapel Hill Elementary School, and I'm here on behalf of HCAS. So we have additional questions from parents and participants. Answer should be no more than 90 seconds. My first question goes to Mrs. Adler. What do you plan to do about the problem of special education and the intersection of race?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
What do you plan to do about the problem of special education and the intersection of race?
Oh, an intersection of race.
Yes.
Well, I certainly do believe that we have to have, we're working diligently, and hopefully we have appropriate equity for our special education students as they are required by law through IDEA. So one of the things that I do think is an equity issue is the way that we're teaching the English language and reading. I think that would be extremely helpful for to get our students up to speed on reading, and that's a life changer. So that would be my first goal there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adler. This question goes to Mrs. McCoy. Do you believe that special education is well funded?
I don't believe that special education is well funded, and it's not well developed as far as how we meet the needs of students. Your question to Ms. Adler about the intersectionality of race and special education, there's outside of the special education itself, there is a need for people to address their biases, right? And we have all kinds of biases. There's this thing called the soft bigotry of low expectations. And so if you don't expect a child who has special needs to be able to achieve, if you don't expect a child who comes from a different racial identity to achieve, then that may impact the way you as an educator works with them. Were you trying to speak? I think I see your lips moving, Grace. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, I was looking at you when I was speaking to make sure I was answering your question. Okay, but I think that there is a need to examine where the funds are going, right? There's lots of money out there, but the question is, where is the money being applied? Clearly, it's not being applied to the training. And so I would strongly suggest that we do a better job of providing effective professional development for our educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. My next question is for Dr. Chen.
Sure.
Okay. What are your thoughts on handling a protocol for mental health episodes that happens at school?
Yeah, I think I already mentioned, we need to basically look at the cases we had before. The teacher shared with me. When things happen, they don't have support, and then there's a crisis. They have to evacuate. How do we prevent that? We need a staff of trained people can prepare for this. They don't know how to do the crisis management. That's the training need to be in place. And then the staffing is number one. If we don't have a staffing, special ed, we have have a big issue, we wouldn't have other resources. So the paraeducator, the psychologist, the so many other people, they need to be getting involved. They supporting the school, and maybe one-to-one ratio to helping. And I think that's really the key. We have a trained staff. We have somebody in the classroom. We have a teacher can, general educate. They can focus on the instruction. Then the problem can be minimized. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chen. My next question goes to Mr. Newberger.
Hi, Grace.
Yes. How would you address bullying and students with disabilities? How would you address bullying with students with disabilities?
Yeah, bullying is a big problem, and our students with disabilities all too often are victims of bullying. And I'm excited that the bullying policy is under review right now with the group of parents and community members and staff and educators. And I'm excited for that policy to get updated and reinvigorated with the latest kind of thinking in academia and best practices in other places around how we deal with bullying. I think a lot of the issue with bullying, though, needs to come down to prevention. And that's really, the culture in the school. And again, that's where I think restorative practices can really transform a school culture to minimize and reduce incidents of bullying. And that's, I've seen it firsthand. My youngest child is at Swansfield Elementary School, and Swansfield has really been an amazing success story, a real turnaround from where it was just a few years ago. And it's because of brilliant leadership in the principal's office, but that leader embraced restorative practices and the staff embraced it wholeheartedly, and it transformed that building and it transformed that community. So when there's a breach, everyone in that community works to heal that breach. And so in that kind of environment, bullying is not tolerated, and it's not about the staff coming down and disciplining. It's about the peers making sure that they're treating each other correctly, and that incidents of bullying are much less frequent. So I think we definitely need to get the policy right so that we're handling incidents of bullying correctly, and we need to make sure we're doing the data collection right so that we're tracking those incidents, especially around populations like our students with disabilities. But whatever we can do to prevent bullying is crucial. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nisberger. My next question goes to Ms. Adler. Would you be open to changing long-standing policies, providing adequate research to justify doing so?
Absolutely. We have, science is changing. So when we get updated information and, it is applicable, I absolutely think we have to be flexible and want to apply that as needed. I absolutely would support that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. My last question goes to Mrs. McCoy. Many students with serious needs must go to non-public school outside of the county. Why do we have so few opportunities for students with intensive disability to be served within their own community schools?
I think it's availability of the specialists is part of the issue. There's such a huge spectrum of needs, and the school system is barely keeping up with the kind of the average needs of special education students. So when you go outside of the kind of the average needs and you go to the really extreme needs, then the system has to call upon outside resources. And as well-funded as the county is, it's hard to get that special staff because you've got to pay people with those special skills. And the school system is not necessarily the best when it comes to paying for the need, for skilled staff. They barely are keeping up with general education pay. And so I can't imagine with someone with extremely special skills working with students with special needs coming into this county and accepting the pay that they would get. So I think that's part of the issue is this system does not fund the needs enough to draw in that kind of staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Do we still have some time for more questions, or?
Yeah, I think we have time for 2 more if you want to go ahead, and we'll move to our closing.
So my next question goes to Ms. Haller. What step would you take to maximize the ability and the actualization of IP follow through at school and staff level?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What steps would you take to maximize the ability and the actualization of IP follow through at school and staff level?
As I understand the question, I do think that along with many other areas of our special education program, we are just lacking in staff. We need additional staff support this particular area as well as many others. Unfortunately, at this particular time, that's really where we are right now. I mean, so many of the areas of our special education program are just terribly affected by the lack of staffing, which is in turn going to cause additional problems because it's very difficult and very intense work. And without proper support, we have to worry about hanging on to the people that we have in place now, who are very professional and hardworking, but staffing is really causing such shortfall in so many areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haller. My next question goes to Mr. Newberger. What are your thoughts on the current mental health and special education training for paraeducator, teacher, and staff?
Oh, thanks, Grace. I think we really need to look hard at mental health across the board. And I mean, it's legitimately a crisis, right? I think we all need to be like probably 15, 20 times more alarmed about mental health right now than we all are. I mean, the American Academy of Pediatrics, along with the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and the Children's Hospital Association last year, almost a year ago, October 2021, declared a national state of crisis around mental health for our children and our adolescents, right? It's the levels of depression and anxiety and suicide across all students, all adolescents is frightening. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people ages 10 to 24 in America right now. And that's terrifying as parents and as community members. And we can't be okay with that. And we're not going to be able to solve that problem by tinkering around the margins of doing what we normally do, right? The easy answer, the quick answer is always, well, we need more psychiatrists, we need more psychologists, we need more counselors in our schools. Yes, and that's a start, but every district in the country, every district in Maryland is fighting over those folks to get them in. So yes, we need more, but we also need to look top to bottom at what are we doing to prepare our students? What are we doing to arm our students with resiliency, with life skills, with social emotional learning, with the tools they need to be more resilient to face these issues. And we also need to really be looking outside of our school buildings. What kind of community partnerships can we continue to build? There's so much in Howard County. There's so many nonprofits, there's so many healthcare providers, mental health providers. We need to really be pushing to build partnerships outside of the school building for our kids. And ultimately it comes down to funding again. We need to be banging on the doors of Annapolis, banging on the doors of the county council. We need more resources for our kids. It's a crisis, and we can't solve a crisis with just business as usual. We need to really, it needs to be general quarters on mental health to make sure all of our kids, especially our kids with disabilities, are really safe and healthy and able to learn.
Thank you, Mr. Newberger.
Thanks so much, Grace. Before I turn to closing statements, I do want to thank all the parents who've helped put this together. I want to thank all the candidates. Our students do face major challenges. I know I can speak for my daughter who's nonverbal. She can't speak for herself. And we need people on the board in our district, to look out for our students who always cannot advocate, for themselves. And so I appreciate everything you all shared, whether it was your personal experience. I also heard you talking to parents and teachers and what they're experiencing. We really need whoever of you is lucky enough, to win election. I'm heartened that you all know that you need to think about this special education community as really important and needing that advocacy at the board. So I'm really heartened in that. We have had, really are grateful for the resources that the board and the county council did put into special education this year. It's catching us up for years of underinvestment, but we have a lot of challenges, ahead. So, we appreciate you taking the time to fill out the questionnaire in advance. It will be up on the event page for those parents who want to read the full written responses. That will be up on the event page alongside the recording. And with that, let's turn to closing statements. We will go in the reverse order that we started with. So Ms. McCoy, you'll be first with your 1 minute closing statement.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with the parents of students with special needs. It's a very important area, and I think it's a very neglected area of education. Speaking as a general ed teacher, I know what little preparation I received, and so I can't imagine that things have gotten much better because of all of the other responsibilities that have been placed on educators. And so as a board member, should I be elected, I will have a keen ear listening out for those concerns of parents and students with special needs. You need someone who has the level of empathy, and I'm a dyslexic, so I understand struggle. And as a mechanical engineer by degree, I'm a problem solver. And so with that combination of it being an educator and an engineer, I think I bring to the board what no one else can bring, which is an understanding of problem solving and of educating children across the board. Thank you.
Dr. Chen?
So, we have 6,000 students, they need help. It's a huge group. And also as a parent of 3 children attending the current HCPSS, as a scout leader, I have witnessed a lot of challenges of students with disabilities at the school and also scouting events. So during my campaign, I also met a lot of school psychologists, ARS teachers, OT, PT in special ed, also listened to their concern. And also people here reach to me and bring a lot of good knowledge to me. During the complex and the wide spectrum of the special needs, I will continue to listen and to learn from parents, professionals, advocacies in this special area. And I always listen to you. And if you have a chance, we can sit together, and I want to hear more story and experience. Thank you.
Mr. Newberger.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you, everyone. HCAS, CCAC, thank you so much for this forum. This was great. I'm glad we got to talk about these critical issues in some depth. Thank you, parents, for being here. Great questions that you added as well. These are huge issues. Our kids deserve better, I think, is the bottom line. Our students with disabilities deserve everything we can give them. And I think as a district, as a society, we need to be judging ourselves on how well we're taking care of those of us with the highest needs. And by that scale, we're failing. We're failing your kids. We're failing all of our kids in way too many ways. And we can do better, and we need to do better. We've got so many talented special educators and gen ed educators as well, but we've got them in bad systems, and we've got them with insufficient accountability, and we've got an unproductive culture in central office in too many ways. Systems, accountability, leadership, these are things the board can do to help. And we can also be beating the drum to get more resources and making sure that when budget time comes around, that we're spending the resources in the right way to help our kids. If I make it to the board, I'm going to be an advocate for our students with disabilities. I'm going to be listening to you, the parents. I'm going to be listening to our special educators. I'm going to be doing my homework and getting deep in the issues. And I'm going to be doing everything I can to hold the superintendent and his staff accountable for making better outcomes for our kids. Our kids absolutely need us to do better, and I'm committed to making sure that we get that done. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you all walk away with a good understanding of kind of us four candidates. And I really appreciate the time and the opportunity. So thanks again, HCAS and CCAC.
And lastly, Ms. Adler.
Thank you so much for hosting this forum this evening. I also want to express a sincere thank you to all of the teachers and parents and members of various organizations who so graciously gave their time when I had questions, and I'm still on the learning curve, and I don't know that anybody can really master entirely the depth of this enormous subject of special education. It was amazing to me, and I really appreciate it. The HCPSS, in terms of special education, does a very nice job of promoting and marketing. We all know that people come to Howard County for the school systems, and a lot of people come to Howard County for the special education school systems. We're a victim of our own success. And unfortunately, it is so razor thin that the delivery of the services that are expected and are spoken of are not happening in many ways, which is causing so much more anxiety and stress for these families with children with special needs. The monies that they have to spend to get their children assessed because the system isn't working for them is heartbreaking in many cases. I spoke to one family who just hasn't been able to buy a house because they're spending all of their money on making sure that they have services for their children that they're not receiving through the school system. So these situations are it's something that really is something that we think about a lot. And in any measure that we can improve and make life easier for the students and their families, and have true success for these for children. I did see recently the news video of a young member of our community who gained employment through the Howard County Autism Hiring Program. I mean, what an awesome story, and how successful is that? I congratulate this program. And as a parent with grown children, we always say to ourselves, will there be a spot for my child? Will there be a spot for them to do something that they enjoy and that they can succeed in? This is the purpose of the K through 12 education. And as community leaders, we have to make sure that we are preparing our children, all children, for this next phase of their journey. If I am fortunate enough to be elected to the Board of Education, I can bring every compassion and focus to bear to make the lives better of our special education community. Thank you.
Thanks so much to all our candidates for spending the time, to all you parents who've come here and asked questions. I'll just close a reminder that early voting starts on Thursday, October 27th, and will continue through Thursday, November 3rd. And of course, they'll be voting on Election Day, Tuesday, November 8th. So I encourage you all to vote, whoever you choose for. And please visit both the HCAS and CCAC websites for the recording of tonight's presentation and the full answers to the candidates. Thank you all, and have a good evening.